It's audition time, but not for Walker Scoble, who was cast early as the titular hero of the new Disney Plus series Percy Jackson and the Olympians. With the protagonist in place, the rest of the cast has to be fit around him, especially the crucial roles of Grover Underwood and Annabeth Chase, Percy's best friends who accompany him on his adventures through modern-day Greek mythology. That means chemistry reads with every possible combination of co-stars. As Scoble remembers it, there were 11 candidates competing to play his on-screen best friends, which meant about 30 different trios. Since the young star had to do about 3 takes with each group, that was almost 100 iterations in all. When we finished my chemistry read, I just remember feeling so bad for Walker. Arian Simhadri, who ultimately won the role of the Satyr Grover, tells EW. He was very clearly exhausted. There were multiple Grovers at the chemistry read. And so James Bobin, the director of the first couple episodes, was like, "All right, let's move on to the next." And Walker was just like, "That wasn't it? There's more." I felt so bad. All these months later, as he sits next to Simhadri in a joint Zoom interview, Scoble still has his game face on, like a true professional. I mean, obviously it was a lot of fun, he assures us. "I got to hang out with Rick the whole day." That's Rick Riordan he's referring to, the prolific novelist who began this whole saga nearly 20 years ago when he first published The Lightning Thief. The story of a young misfit boy learning he's the son of a Greek god, and that all the scary monsters and scheming deities of classical mythology are alive and well in present-day America, was such a rousing success with young readers that it spawned 4 sequels and several spin-off series where Riordan brought the same treatment to other ancient mythologies, Roman and Heroes of Olympus, Egyptian in the King Chronicles, and Norse in Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. But Percy Jackson and the Olympians was the first and best, and, much like Taylor Swift, its appeal to young fans has only grown over time. If you passed by New York's Prospect Park this summer, decades after the original publication of The Lightning Thief, you were likely to see kids running around in orange t-shirts for Camp Half-Blooded, the collection of cabins where Percy and friends learn about their heritage and hone their skills as they play acted with homemade swords and shields. The fandom around Percy and Riordan is strong and loyal, having survived even after a lackluster first attempt at adaptation. In 2010, at the height of Harry Potter and Twilight mania, The Lightning Thief was made into a movie starring Logan Lerman, Alexandria Daddario, and Brandon T. Jackson as Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. It did just well enough at the box office to justify a sequel, which adapted the second book in the series, Sea of Monsters, but didn't spawn a film franchise worthy of the wealth of the material or passion of the fanbase. So when Percy Jackson and the Olympians premieres on December 20th, the Disney Plus series hopes to finally do justice to Camp Half-Blood on screen. "This is a larger canvas," Riordan tells EW in a joint interview with his wife Becky, both of whom are executive producers on the show. "It gives us the time to tell the story properly in an episodic manner, which fits the books. We were very lucky to get a team that agreed with that approach. Doing the series as a TV show rather than a film franchise allowed the creators to better reflect the format of the books, and making it in 2023 allowed for a fresh perspective to the characters. Far from insisting the show be word-perfect to the text, the Riordans were very willing to try new ideas." Black actress Leah Jeffries was ultimately cast as Annabeth, even though the character was originally white and blonde. But inclusion has always been a source of strength in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Percy's dyslexia, inspired by the Riordan's own son, is what allows him to see magic and monsters in the first place. Speaking of monsters, expect a more fleshed-out characterization for the legendary snake-haired Medusa, Jessica Parker Kennedy, on the new show. In my book, Medusa was pretty much a standard villain. "She just comes and goes, and you don't really get into it too much," Riordan says. So it was really fun to work on episode 3 with Jessica. The script was a lot more nuanced, and I think you see a lot more from Medusa's point of view, which makes it a lot richer. What happens to Percy throughout is that his ideas about both heroes and monsters are challenged constantly, adds Becky. That was something we were allowed to play with on this show that you don't see in the movie at all. But no matter how you tell the story, Percy Jackson and the Olympians will rely heavily on its title character. Luckily, to Riordan and the producers, Scoble is Percy. The whole team is in agreement. Walker Scoble was born for this part, says the author, who should know. Don't get me wrong, he's incredibly talented. I'm sure he was born for a lot of roles. But he really is perfect for this. He has that voice down so well, and he embodies who Percy is. A major element of that is age. At 14 years old, Scoble is much closer to Percy's textual age of 12 than Lerman, who was 18 when he made The Lightning Thief. When co-showrunner John Steinberg and Rick sent me the script for the first time, in the first scene description it said, Percy Jackson, 12, Bobin recalls. And I just went, brilliant. Exactly right. Because the eyes of a 12-year-old are very different from the eyes of an older kid. I have a kid and a teenager, so I know this. A 12-year-old and a 17-year-old are different universes. A 12-year-old is still youngish, but is learning so much and still has a really magical appreciation of the world.